All right, ready to dive deep?
Always.
Today, it's Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. A classic. But we're going beyond the surface. Like, how can this book actually help us connect better with people?
Right. It's interesting how this book from decades ago still applies today. What Carnegie talks about, basic human psychology, that hasn't changed.
Exactly. So we'll unpack those principles, see why they work, and maybe even bring in some newer research. Yeah.
Yeah, some real life examples.
So right off the bat, Carnegie says, don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Sounds simple. But honestly, how often do we get defensive when someone points out our flaws?
Oh, all the time. It's like instant, isn't it?
It is. Like our
I'm
brains
like,
just
yeah.
fight or flight, and suddenly we're justifying ourselves instead of actually listening.
Makes sense. There's neuroscience behind that. The amygdala, that's a part of our brain, for fear and anger. It takes over when we feel threatened. So goodbye, rational thinking.
So basically, criticism throws us into this emotional spiral. Forget having a good conversation, let alone trying to actually influence someone.
Exactly. So, Carnegie's advice: shift gears. Focus on genuine appreciation, find the good stuff, acknowledge it sincerely. Think about it when someone's genuinely praised your work. How'd it feel?
It's the best. Makes you want to work even harder, Like you have to live up to those expectations. And there's research backing that up. Positive reinforcement works way better than punishment.
Absolutely. It's tapping into our own motivation to grow. Like, think of it like watering a plant, not pruning it down to nothing.
And that, getting someone motivated from the inside, that links perfectly with Carnegie's idea of arousing an eager want in someone. This isn't manipulation, right?
No, no, it's understanding what someone needs, what they want, and then framing your request so it matches those.
It's like that saying, you can lead a horse to water.
But you can't make it drink.
Right. But if the water's really appealing, maybe it'll drink then. So let's move on to those 6 ways to make people like you. Now, this isn't surface level charm, right? This is about real connection.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so first up, become genuinely interested in other people. In our busy lives, it's easy to forget to really listen, like asking questions that go deeper than small talk.
It's going past the surface, making real human connections.
I read this study, people who ask more questions, especially those follow-up ones, they're seen as more likable and competent. It shows you're engaged, curious, and that you care about what they're saying.
Being present, not just physically, mentally and emotionally, too.
And that comes across in something as simple as a smile. Carnegie says, smile. Sounds basic, right?
It might seem basic, but it's powerful. Think about it. A genuine smile, that's universal. It means friendly. It puts people at ease.
Yeah, like if you approach someone frowning, they're going to be on guard. But a warm smile says, hey, I'm open to connecting.
Plus, smiles are contagious. When you smile, they smile back. It's science, mirror neurons.
Whole loop of good vibes. Now, here's a principle we probably all struggle with. Remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language.
I'm terrible with names, I'll admit it.
Me too. But Carnegie's point is using someone's name shows respect. It makes them feel seen, and it builds rapport, doesn't it?
It does.
It's like you're saying, I value you enough to remember this. That feels good. I read that hearing our own name, it activates those reward centers in the brain.
A little dopamine boost. I like that.
So the next 2 principles, they go together. Be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves and talk in terms of the other person's interests.
Taking the focus off ourselves and putting it on the other person. Really engaging, giving them space to share, talking about what matters to them.
Not trying to dominate the conversation.
Right, making space for real understanding.
And finally, make the other person feel important and do it sincerely. That kind of sums it all up, doesn't it?
It does. Genuine appreciation and respect, that's the foundation of any strong relationship, personal or professional.
Okay, so we've got the basics of how to handle people
Yeah.
and how to be more likable. But what about taking it further, like actually influencing people's thoughts, their actions? That's where 12 ways to win people to your way of thinking comes in.
That's the good stuff.
The secrets of persuasion.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, what stood out to you so far? What resonates?
I think it's how much Carnegie emphasizes sincerity. This isn't about tricks. It's about connecting with people for real.
Right. Okay, I'm ready for those 12 ways. Lead the way.
All right, this first one might be a surprise. Carnegie says the only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it.
Wait, avoid arguments. Isn't that like part of life?
It seems that way, doesn't it? But think, how often do arguments end well?
Good point. Usually everyone just ends up frustrated.
Exactly. Arguments, that fight or flight response again, we can't think straight, can't see the other side.
So instead of trying to win, what do?
Find common ground. See their perspective. Focus on working together, not against each other.
Building bridges, not walls. And that leads to the next one. Understanding their perspective. Show respect for the other person's opinions. Never say, you're wrong.
Oh, I've been guilty of that. Wanting to be right, even if it means shutting down the other person.
We all have. But when you contradict someone head on, it makes them defensive. Nobody wins.
It's like saying, my opinion's the only one that matters. That shuts down any real conversation.
So instead of, you're wrong, what should we say?
Acknowledge their view, ask questions, maybe offer a different perspective, but gently. It's a small change, but it makes a huge difference.
Inviting them into the conversation, not a fight. And that brings us to, well, admitting when we're wrong. If you are wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. That's a tough one, isn't it?
It is. Ego gets in the way. But honestly, when someone admits they messed up, it builds trust, shows they're honest.
It takes the heat out of the situation. Hey, I'm human, I make mistakes.
It shows vulnerability, and that makes people open up more.
Like diffusing a bomb. Speaking of a positive atmosphere, the next one is begin in a friendly way. Simple, but
Do we always do it? Sometimes we jump right into the heavy stuff.
yeah, right. We got to remember, we're talking to people, not robots. Being friendly from the start makes a difference.
Sets a better tone for working together.
And then, to build on that positivity, there's this interesting technique. Get the other person saying yes, yes immediately.
I like that one.
It's about finding things you agree on right away, establishing that common ground. Then you can build from there.
Yeah, like building momentum, they're already nodding along before you even get to your main point.
We're on the same team here. That makes it easier to bring in your own ideas.
And that leads right into let the other person do a great deal of the talking, which goes against our instinct, doesn't it?
Big time. We want to talk. But Carnegie's saying, really listen. Let them express themselves.
That's how we understand their perspective, their why. And that's key if you want to persuade someone.
Like gathering intel before you make a move.
Exactly. All right, now here's a tricky one. Let the other person feel that the idea is his or hers. Now, this isn't stealing their idea.
Right.
It's about guiding them towards the solution so they feel ownership.
That's clever. Because then they're invested in it, right?
Exactly. You're helping their idea grow, not handing them a finished product.
Empowering them to be part of the solution.
Hmm.
And that takes empathy, which is the next principle. Try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view.
This is tough, stepping outside our own heads and trying to see the world through their eyes, acknowledging that their perspective, even if it's different, it's valid.
Putting on different glasses and seeing a whole new world.
And that can change everything, not just how we interact, but how we grow as people.
Okay, so that's 8 out of the 12 ways. My brain needs a break.
Mine too. Lots to think about.
We'll be back soon to cover those last 4 principles. Back again with more from Dale Carnegie.
We were talking about seeing things from the other person's point of view, right? Empathy. Yeah, and Carnegie takes it a step further. His 9th principle is, be sympathetic to the other person's ideas and desires. Not just understanding, but really connecting with their feelings.
So like recognizing their dreams are important to them, even if we don't necessarily share those dreams, it's emotional.
Right, and that deeper connection can make them more receptive to what you're saying.
It's a bridge built with empathy, right? And speaking of emotions, the next principle is appeal to the nobler motives. Carnegie says most people want to do what's right, what aligns with their values.
Tapping into their, internal compass makes sense. Don't you feel more motivated when you're contributing to something bigger than yourself?
For sure. It feels good to act on your values and to make those good intentions even stronger. Carnegie says dramatize your ideas.
Storytelling. Paint a picture with your words instead of just, dry facts. Engage their imagination.
I love that. It's like you're taking them on a journey. Way more engaging than just reading a textbook.
Think of the best speakers, the leaders you admire. They probably tell great stories. It makes the message memorable.
Okay, hit me with the last principle. What's number 12?
Throw down a challenge. Tap into their competitive side, their desire to prove themselves.
It's like saying, I know you can do this. That's got to be motivating.
It sparks that drive to push further. There's research on this, people take action when they feel challenged, like there's a purpose.
So 12 ways to win people over. A whole toolkit for persuasion, for understanding how people work. But now, things get even more interesting.
We're moving into leadership territory.
Ooh, exciting. So this is about influence, but not by force. It's inspiration, genuine connection. Okay, I'm ready to level up my leadership skills. What's first?
Positivity is key. Begin with praise and honest appreciation. Just like before, acknowledging the good stuff sets the stage.
Right, instead of jumping into criticism, you highlight what's working well. It's encouraging, isn't it?
It is. And then, when you need to address the not-so-good stuff, be indirect. Call attention to people's mistakes indirectly.
Be subtle. Like instead of saying, you messed up,
Mhm.
maybe it's more like a question, an observation.
Exactly. I noticed the report wasn't finished. Was there something that came up? It's gentler. It opens up a discussion instead of shutting it down.
Way less likely to trigger that defensive reaction. And that leads to, well, leading by example. Talk about your own mistakes before criticizing the other person.
That's huge. Owning up to your own mistakes shows you're not perfect. It creates a culture of learning, not punishment.
Something we forget as leaders, right? We need to be vulnerable too. That builds trust.
It does. It makes people feel safe to try new things, without fear of messing up. Okay, speaking of empowering people, principle 4 is ask questions instead of giving direct orders.
Guiding them, not dictating.
Right. They feel more responsible, more like they're part of the solution, not just following orders.
Such a small change in how you communicate, but the effect is huge.
And that brings us to let the other person save face, protect their dignity, even when they've messed up.
We all make mistakes. Sometimes the best way to help someone learn is to, give them space to figure it out without feeling humiliated,
Balance between holding people accountable and being compassionate.
which leads right into praise the slightest improvement and praise every improvement. Be hearty in your approbation and lavish in your praise. That's a mouthful.
But it's powerful, right?
Oh,
Recognizing progress, big or small, showering them with praise, it keeps them going.
like watching something grow. But sometimes you need more than praise, right? You need the right environment. And that's where give the other person a fine reputation to live up to comes in.
Setting high expectations, expressing your confidence in them, that's inspiring.
So it's like saying, you got this, I believe in you. They have something to aim for.
And to help them get there, use encouragement. Make the fault seem easy to correct. Help them see it as a challenge to overcome, not a failure.
Break it down into manageable steps.
Exactly. And finally, number 9, make the other person happy about doing the thing you suggest.
Framing your request in a way that shows how it benefits them, too.
Everyone wins. So there you have it, 9 principles for being a better leader.
Wow, that was a lot. So much to think about, so practical. I'm already thinking about how to use these in my own life.
Me too. But before we finish up, what stood out to you from these leadership principles?
For me, it's that emphasis on positivity, on encouragement, recognizing the good, helping people grow. It's so much better than just criticizing all the time.
It is, isn't it? It's more effective and it makes everyone happier.
Okay, so we've covered a ton of ground today, from the basics of handling people to persuasion to leadership. Dale Carnegie, he really knew what he was talking about.
He did. But this is just the beginning, right? Now we take these principles and actually use them.
Make them a part of our lives.
Yeah.
So what's next on our deep dive agenda? What other wisdom did Carnegie share?
Believe it or not, that's all we have from How to Win Friends and Influence People this time.
Really? Feels like we just started. There's got to be more to uncover.
Oh, there's tons more. But that's the thing about deep dives. They're a starting point.
We have a good foundation now.
We do. So here's a final challenge for you. Choose one of these principles, the one that really resonated with you, and try to use it this week. See what happens, how it affects your interactions.
That's a great challenge. I'm already thinking about which one to pick.
Perfect. And remember, the more you practice, the more natural it becomes.
Like exercising a muscle.
Right, exactly. So until next time, keep diving deep, keep connecting.
Back again for our final deep dive into Dale Carnegie. It's amazing how much we've already unpacked, from how to win friends and influence people.
I know, right? From those fundamentals of just interacting with people to persuasion to leadership. It's a lot.
And what strikes me is this isn't just about getting ahead in business or manipulating people.
No, not at all.
It's about, a better way to live, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's about more fulfilling relationships.
Carnegie's not just giving us techniques. It's like a whole mindset, respect, considering other people.
Right, and that can change everything. How we connect with people at work, at home, even just walking down the street.
It's like a guide to better, more authentic connections everywhere.
So here's a final thought for you to chew on this week. As you go about your day, Pay attention to how you're interacting with people.
Okay, I'm listening.
Are you criticizing or are you appreciating?
Hmm.
Are you really listening? Or just waiting for your turn to talk?
Yeah,
And think about your intentions. Are you approaching people because you genuinely want to connect? Or are you just trying to get something?
that's a powerful question. It brings all of Carnegie's principles together, doesn't it? Being
Mhm.
mindful, shifting the focus to the other person, wanting to connect for real.
Exactly. And the best part is, these aren't just ideas. They're things we can actually do to improve our relationships.
It's about making life better for ourselves and everyone around us. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Dale Carnegie, what's the takeaway?
Take these principles, experiment, see how they work in your own life.
See how they can change your interactions, make your connections stronger, and help you navigate all the messiness of human relationships.
With more grace, more ease.
Until next time, keep diving deep.